Okay, how about this then, Jared? Big weekend last weekend. I don't want to get too much about the specifics of the weekend. Maybe give me like the highlights of the news of what broke this last weekend, and then I have some other bits that I want to pick your brain about.
Sure. So it's been a big 2 weeks to start the reopening of recruitment for colleges to be able to get some guys on campus. There have been pretty much nonstop visits, camps the last couple weeks, the 7-on-7 tournament on Saturday, and the biggest news coming out this weekend from the on-campus activities on Saturday was the 2023 quarterback Ricky Collins from Woodlawn Baton Rouge picking up an offer, as well as 2023 offensive lineman Caden Jones from De La Salle down in New Orleans. Two guys that had been impressive in the camps the previous week and then came back and continued to impress the coaches enough to where they felt like they couldn't pass on those guys.
Jared, the quarterback from Woodlawn, you're exactly right. I'll be completely honest with you. Like, I had not yet heard of this young man before I went out to 7-on-7 this weekend. And you could tell, you always go out to these 7-on-7s and there's a buzz that starts. Maybe a guy that's not, the biggest guy there. There becomes a buzz around the 7-on-7 and everybody starts to kind of gravitate towards the field that he's playing at. And he had that feel to him. My guy Terrio was over there. He's like, hey, you got to come watch this guy spin it. And so we sat there and we watched the entire game. Now, is that someone in the recruiting world that's like, okay, once people get their eyes on him, they're going to know exactly who he is? Or was that maybe even a surprise to y'all?
No, he's a guy that I think if last year had gone more normally than obviously everything we had on our plates, and he had a chance to get out to some college campuses last summer, and if some college coaches had a chance to see him during a normal sophomore season this past fall for Woodlawn, that some of his recruitment would have started a little bit more quickly than it ultimately did for him under the circumstances. But he's a guy that was on a lot of radars even in their shortened sophomore season this fall, which Woodlawn, because of a couple of COVID shutdowns, only got a chance to play 4 regular season games. But he was very impressive when he did get the opportunities. College coaches started to monitor him. And then signing day in February was when a couple finally started to pull the trigger and make a couple offers. And LSU on March 1st or 2nd, reached out and started scheduling weekly meetings with him to kind of get to know him, make sure he got to know the offense, and just kind of see what the fit might be there. And after his performance the previous week, where they already had that foundation, he had a chance to talk quite a bit more with some of those offensive coaches and spend some time with them. And he left last week, I think, feeling like he was pretty close to an offer, and it's just kind of been something that's built throughout the spring.
Yeah, so then he does well at 7-on-7 tournament. He gets that offer. And let's just talk about this 2023 class from a quarterback perspective, right? I mean, there's a lot of big names. Ricky getting the offer there. Holstein's had an offer from LSU, right? He's now added Ohio State and Alabama. You got Arch Manning, who obviously has his pick of litter, just like going to camp everywhere and just putting out crazy kind of highlights. Where does the quality of this quarterback class kind of stack up to someone like you who has covered Louisiana so intensely now for a number of years?
Yeah, it's a pretty ridiculous class, and it's one that folks have had their eyes on for a while just because of a couple of those top-tier names, particularly Arch and Eli. But there's a lot of depth there, and you see some of it coming with Ricky Collins. Reese Mooney out at Denham Springs has picked up a ton of offers. He had more offers, I think, than any quarterback in the state at one point in the 22 or 23 class, but a couple of these other guys have started to blow up and pick up some really huge Power 5 offers. And so when you talk about some of the top leaders of this class, and now 3 of them with LSU offers, as well as the fact that I think you're looking at, in another strong class overall in Louisiana, 16 to 20 of the top 100 prospects overall being quarterbacks.
Wow.
And by comparison, when I look at 2022, I think you're talking about 4 or 5 of the top 100 guys being quarterbacks. And I think there's that many that are in the top 20 for 2023. And then it just kind of keeps on rolling with some guys from all over the state. So it's one that is going to have college coaches coming through the boot heavily the next couple of years trying to secure some signatures for 2023.
And it really seems that the narrative has changed as far as quarterbacks coming out through, in Louisiana. You would have one or two maybe, spread amongst 5 classes, but it seems like year in and year out. It's not just recently. I mean, really over the last couple of years, the talent at that position has gone way up. Is there anything maybe you can point to? Is it the growth of 707 and some of these teams that they have now, like the Bootleggers and others, or what is it that's made quarterback growth in Louisiana really rise quickly here?
Yeah, I think it's probably a combination of things, and the 7-on-7 certainly helps to have these guys get out there and pretty close to year-round now be competing and trying to pick apart defenses at high levels where they get out to these tournaments all over the country and are facing DBs and linebackers that are being pursued by the top prospects coast to coast. But I think this is kind of this 23 class that everything has started to ramp up toward is also just kind of a special class anyway, or it just happens that you have some kids like Arch Manning and Eli Holstein and Ricky Collins all in that same class instead of being, born a year ahead or a year behind. Yeah. So I think some of it's a little bit coincidence that they happen to be the same age. I think the 7-on-7 stuff has really helped quarterbacks develop at an earlier age to where people are able to where college coaches and media are able to identify them a little bit more quickly, both in terms of their development and the amount of platform and exposure they have at such an early age as well.
We're talking to Jarrett Roser at Jarrett Roser on Twitter. He works with Tiger Details, amongst others, online, Louisiana versus all y'all. Jarrett's the man. Jarrett, okay, a couple other pieces of news here. Marcus Scott, the second decommits from LSU to go and commit to Mizzou. What's the story there?
Yeah, I wasn't particularly surprised when that one happened. I think this is going to be another interesting class to watch for LSU kind of down the stretch with some shuffling. They feel like they're in really good position with a lot of guys that are not currently committed on top of the dozen that they already had committed. And so I think after 15 months of not being able to see these guys in person, now that everything's hitting so hot and heavy this summer and they're getting a chance to more closely evaluate some guys, you're going to see a lot of shuffle the rest of this year.
And then some other news. Well, Terrence Welch is a 4-star that's been committed to LSU, considered a hard commit. Did he tweet something about some big news coming today? It's got what do you think's going on?
Yeah, I told LT last night that he needed to chill out because my phone started vibrating off the table with people that were freaking out about what this big news might be. But he's a guy that you mentioned. He's a really hard commit for LSU. He's a kid that grew up loving LSU and has continued to be more and more enamored as he's gotten a chance to get closer, build that relationship with Corey Raymond. A lot of his closest friends around the state starting to commit, both some signees in that 2021 class and now to have him and Jacoby Matthews and a few guys committed for 2022. I think folks will feel good about the news when it comes out. I don't think he's going anywhere.
Okay. That is good to hear. A nice little positive, optimistic tease from my guy Jarrett Roser at Jarrett Roser. Go follow him on Twitter today. He stays locked in on the recruiting circuit in general, but especially Louisiana. Nobody knows it better. Jarrett, thank you so much, man.
Yeah, man, anytime. Always a pleasure.
All right, when we get back, let's do a little Ask the Bench, brought to you by Cold Coors Light. You a lot.